I would spend my lunches on the fourth floor of the university library, sitting on the floor between two rows of books and eating my lunch alone. I became a turtle, you know, like hiding in my shell all the time, lacking vulnerable, meaningful connections. I was constantly scared that people wouldn't like me. And so I was insecure and I was always trying to act perfect, to be perfect, and I became a people pleaser. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about feeling lonely, feeling like you don't belong, being insecure, people pleasing, social anxiety, and a bunch of other things like that. It's going to be a ride. Please enjoy. I hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. Growing up in a military family, we would move cities every couple of years. I think the longest time I've ever stayed in one city was 4 years. And while I loved exploring new cities with my family, it was challenging at times because having at a new school where the kids have known each other since kindergarten and trying to make new friends and getting used to the city only to later be uprooted and start all over again. It's hard for a child, you know? I wouldn't change anything about my upbringing, but I do feel like it contributed to my feeling of never really having a strong feeling of belonging anywhere. Also, I'm a very introverted person, so naturally I'm not very social. Like, I was that kid that would never say a word in class and that would spend recess on a bench alone reading a book. When I was a kid, my mom was actually super worried that I wouldn't be able to make friends because of how reserved I was. Luckily, I was able to make a few amazing friends while I was in elementary school, but after a couple of years, I would move away and start all over again. And I feel like that process kind of subconsciously instilled in me a feeling where I'm like, why would I try making new friends again if I'm gonna leave eventually? Like, I would never actively go out and try to make friends. I was always more like, if it happens, it happens. And I'm still like that, you know? For grades 6, 7, and 8, I was living in a small town, literally in the middle of nowhere. And I attended 2 Catholic private schools, one for grade 6 and the other one for grades 7 and 8. And being a gay teenager can be a challenge in and of itself. But when you add the small town aspect and the Catholic school aspect on top of it, it can be something, you know? And I had just come from living in a big city for 3 years where there was like a very diverse population and where the people were most of the time very inclusive. So when I moved to that small town that was like 20 years behind in terms of diversity, it was a big shock for me. Like, one thing I remember vividly is that there were absolutely no openly gay people at all. And starting school at like this very small Catholic school that had less than 100 students in it, where everyone knew each other literally since kindergarten, I felt so out of place. And grades 6 to 8 for me, I feel, are such formative years. And when you see no one like you, you kind of internalize that you have to hide who you are to fit in. This is why representation is so important. This is why I'm so happy that the younger generation has shows like Heartstopper to watch. I can't think of how comforting it would have been to have a show like this when I was 12. And it makes me so furious that people actively object representation. And you know how it is in small towns. People are so terrified of people that are different and they make jokes. And since I knew that I couldn't stand out, in fear of being bullied, I kind of developed a protective mechanism where I would literally try to make myself invisible. Like, I would unconsciously make myself as small as possible, as silent as possible. I wouldn't speak to anyone unless they spoke to me first. All that so no one would pay attention to me and no one would get to know me, so that I could blend in unnoticed. And like, I am not kidding. I spent so many years like looking down when I was walking and trying to make myself as small as possible that my posture was horrible. And even today I have to force myself to, when I walk, to like have my shoulders broad and my chin up. Yeah. And even my best friends when I was young, I would always keep a level of distance because it's so sad, but I was scared that if they got to know me for real and if they knew that I was gay, they wouldn't want to be my friends anymore. So I hid and it worked. I never got bullied. I never got made fun of or anything. But in consequence of that, I became like a turtle, you know, hiding in my shell all the time, lacking vulnerable and meaningful connections, and that can be really lonely. And that shell is hard to break. Even years after, even today, sometimes I still find myself not pursuing friendships or relationships because I have this instilled fear that when they'll get to know me for real, they won't like me anymore. When I got to high school, luckily, I was out of that small town and into a bigger city again. But even though I was out of that small town, the turtle shell protective mechanism that I had formed kind of stayed with me. I was introverted, insecure, and I had social anxiety, so I found comfort in being alone. And my high school was on a university campus, and you can be assured that the minute the bell rang for lunch every day, I would like flee to the university campus because I had less chance of bumping into my classmates there. I would spend my lunches on the fourth floor of the university library, sitting on the floor between two rows of books and eating my lunch alone. And don't feel bad for me, like I wasn't sad. I actually found peace in being alone and I felt comfortable there. But that's the thing about being an introvert. Sometimes our little bubbles, like staying home with our cats and a book or eating lunch in the library alone, your little bubble can become your comfort zone and eventually you accept that as being your reality. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Like even today, that's my reality on most days. Like I need my time alone and it's where I regenerate, where I'm comfortable. However, after spending 19 years in this reality, I've started feeling like my comfort zone, even though necessary at times, also started preventing me from living my dreams. When I was in grade 11, the pandemic started and we were kind of all stuck at home for like 2 years, and I feel like that solidified that reality for me. I feel like for a lot of us, we spent some of our most vital years for social development, the time we were supposed to be in middle school or high school, where you're supposed to be around people and developing your social skills and stuff. A lot of us spent that time in the pandemic, and that not only had a significant impact of increasing feelings of loneliness, but also kind of exacerbated our social anxieties and kind of stopped our social development for a while. Well, that was my experience, for me at least. Even now that I'm in university, I feel like it's so hard to make friends. Like it's been 2 years that I've been at this university already and I haven't made like one single friend. I'm sure this isn't everyone's experience, but for me at least, I feel like everyone comes in for the lecture and there are like 100 to 400 people in the lecture, so obviously we don't get to know our classmates that much. So we come in, listen to the prof, and leave. Nobody really like starts up conversations with each other and we just don't talk. And I'm studying biomedical science at university, and so there's a lot of like pre-med students in my program, and we all have such intense academic workload, and it's such a competitive environment because everyone's aiming for like med school, dental school, vet school, and I feel like that environment is just a breeding ground for loneliness. However, something I'm proud of is I feel like I've made such immense progress ever since I started university, in the sense that I feel like I have truly mastered the art of being alone but not lonely. Like I literally walk around campus with my earphones, listening to music, the sun on my face, and I'm never lonely, even though I am physically alone. And I think that's a really important skill that you have to learn. When you aren't true to who you are, that can be very lonely. And for others not to know who you truly are or not to respect who you are, that's one thing, but for you not to be true to yourself and not to respect yourself is so much worse. And loneliness isn't a physical state. You could be in a room with 1,000 people and feel lonely. Loneliness is a spiritual state, and one that only you can cure. And I've watched like so many videos about this, and the first step to doing this is truly getting to know yourself. And you might ask why? It's because when you are true to yourself, you will respect yourself, you will be more confident, and you will attract people who appreciate and accept who you are. And if someone doesn't like you, like that's fine, good riddance. That's way better than constantly performing to please someone you don't even align with in the first place and that you probably don't even like. And you might have heard me saying being true to yourself a bunch of times, but what does that really mean? What does being true to yourself really mean? Being true to yourself involves aligning your actions and choices with your values and passions. And seriously, do this with me, okay? Take out a journal or a piece of paper or even the notes app in your phone and write down these few things. So first is, who do I want to be truly, regardless of other people's expectations of me? Kind of block out what everyone's told you are all your life, what everyone expects of you, and really ask yourself, who do I truly want to be? Then I want you to write down your top 10 values. Like, if you could only stand for 10 values, what would they be? Then I want you to write down, who do I admire, what are my goals, and what makes me happy? And what you just did is you describe your higher self. And what you can do now is is start living true to your higher self, the person you want to be. And whenever you have a dilemma, just ask yourself, what would my higher self do? And I know this is super cliche, but it's actually true. Another thing is often when we're lonely, we tend to place a big importance on how people perceive us. At least for me, I was constantly scared that people wouldn't like me. And so I was insecure and I was always trying to act perfect, to be perfect, and I became a people pleaser. And what happens when you're a people pleaser is you put everyone else above yourself. Visualize this. You are literally putting them on a high pedestal, like on a throne, and you're on the ground, running around, trying to please them. We are going to abandon these tendencies. First, you are going to take them off of their pedestal, and you are going to put yourself on the pedestal instead. And this doesn't mean like act like you're above them or act like you're better than them. No, this means placing yourself and who you truly want to be first. Next, I want you to do this, okay? Next time you walk into a room, instead of worrying like, oh, will they like me? Do they like me? Blah, 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 blah. Instead, ask this. Do I like them? Do their values align with mine? Do I enjoy their energy? And this is gonna do two things. First of all, it's gonna save you a bunch of low quality connections. And when you're with people whose energy is bad, this will make you lonely, so you don't want those connections. And the second thing this will do is it will make you more confident. Because when you stop worrying about the opinions of people you don't even like, you start respecting yourself more. And when you start respecting yourself more, you attract other people that will also respect you. Next step is becoming your best friend. I know this sounds cliche, but it's the truth, okay? While combating loneliness, of course you can seek out social connections and quality social connections, but it's also so essential that you embrace and enjoy solitude. Like cultivating activities and hobbies that you can engage in independently will help you foster a sense of self-reliance, self-discovery, and self-love. And I know, another cliche, but give yourself the love you are looking for, because you are the single most important relationship you will ever have in your life. And seriously, being alone can be so fun. Like, take your earphones, make yourself a fun playlist, and literally plan an itinerary of a perfect day, like you would do if you had a date with your best friend. Like, go to a cafe in the morning, and then go book shopping, and then go to an art museum all alone. This could be going shopping, going to the zoo, going to the beach, to the spa, to the cinema, to a restaurant with a good book. Treat yourself like you're your own best friend. Because you are. Also, I know sometimes when we're lonely, we can feel like we're the only one experiencing this feeling. We see everyone having friends and having relationships, and you feel like you're on this little isolated island all alone. But I promise you this, you are far from alone. In fact, I think everyone has experienced loneliness at some point in their life. And I read a paper recently that said that Gen Z is the loneliest generation, and the author attributed that to a couple of factors. First, of course, social media. Like, social media has such a considerable impact on the social interactions and relationships of our generation. And like, social media platforms can create a sense of isolation and foster feelings of like fear of missing out, because we're constantly subconsciously comparing our lives with the carefully curated ones of our peers or even celebrities. Similarly, I feel like our generation fosters a lot of superficial connections. We have created this collective fear of vulnerability. Another thing the paper talked about was how Gen Z's increased reliance on technology led to decreased face-to-face interactions. And our overconsumption of digital content leaves us feeling lonely. Finally, the paper brought up how academic pressure and competition can lead to feelings of loneliness, and how Gen Z has one of the highest prevalence of mental health issues like anxiety and depression, which exacerbates our feelings of isolation as well. So please remember that you are not alone in feeling lonely. And I know sometimes when we're in class or a cafe and we see someone that looks cool and that we could see ourselves being friends with, we think of talking to them and then we're like, oh no, they probably already have friends and I don't want to bother them. Next time, try to force yourself to talk to them, because put yourself in their shoes. Like, for me at least, if someone came up to me and talked to me and like wanted to be my friend, I would probably be super happy about it, you know? So it's the same for them. Like, it's human nature. I am optimistic that one day everything will fall into place for each and every one of us and that we will find our community. But in the meantime, I think the most valuable thing that we can do is work on ourselves, and we can be ready when those people arrive, you know? Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed. Please leave a comment down below if you want and talk about what loneliness means to you. I'd love to read your comments for sure. And yeah, I'll see you next week. Bye.